Welcome to HistoVia, your gateway into the past, where history speaks and forgotten worlds come alive. Today, we begin our journey into the sands of time, to a land where gods walked beside kings, where rivers gave birth to empires, and where stone monuments still whisper across more than 4,000 years. This is ancient Egypt, a civilization of mystery and majesty, of science and superstition, of life and eternity. Join us as we uncover the secrets of the pharaohs, sail the waters of the Nile, and step inside temples and tombs built to last forever. Because here, on HistoVia, history is not just remembered, it is reborn. At the break of dawn, the desert awakens. A golden light spreads across the horizon, washing over endless sands. The waters of the Nile shimmer like a ribbon of life, winding its way through barren lands, transforming them into a fertile oasis. This is Egypt, the land of eternity, the cradle of one of humanity's greatest civilizations. For over 3,000 years, long before the rise of Greece or Rome, the Egyptians built a society of astonishing complexity, creativity, and resilience. They raised colossal monuments that still defy the passing of time. They invented systems of writing, medicine, and governance that influenced the very fabric of human history. And they did it all with one clear vision: to achieve harmony in life and eternity in death. Today, we embark on a journey back to the dawn of the pharaohs, to explore the heart of a civilization that continues to fascinate, inspire, and mystify. This is the story of ancient Egypt, the gift of the Nile. In the words of the ancient Greek historian Herodotus, Egypt is the gift of the Nile. And indeed, it was this great river that gave birth to Egyptian civilization. Stretching more than 6,000 kilometers, the Nile is the longest river in the world. In Egypt, it transforms the harsh desert into a narrow green corridor, where life flourished for millennia. Each year, the river flooded its banks, depositing rich black silt across the valley. These floods were not disasters, but blessings. They allowed the Egyptians to grow abundant crops, wheat, barley, flax, and to sustain a growing population. Agriculture was at the very heart of Egyptian society. Farmers dug canals and built dikes to control the flow of water. They learned to predict the cycles of the river, creating one of the earliest calendars in history. With food security came stability, and with stability came progress. But the Nile was more than just an agricultural lifeline. It was a highway that connected Upper and Lower Egypt. Boats carried goods, soldiers, and ideas along its waters. It was a unifying thread, binding together diverse communities under a single land. The birth of a nation. Around 3100 BCE, a remarkable transformation occurred. A king from Upper Egypt, known to us as Narmer, or sometimes as Menes, achieved what no one before him had: he unified the two lands of Egypt into one kingdom. This unification marked the beginning of the Pharaonic era, a period that would last for more than 30 centuries. At its core was the idea of the pharaoh, not just a ruler, but a divine being, a living god on earth. The pharaoh was the embodiment of Ma'at, the principle of cosmic order, truth, and justice. His role was not only to govern, but to maintain balance in the universe itself. To symbolize this unification, Narmer wore a unique crown, the white crown of Upper Egypt and the red crown of Lower Egypt combined. This double crown became one of the most enduring symbols of Egyptian kingship. The new kingdom brought stability, organization, and central authority. From this moment onward, Egypt would emerge as a powerhouse of innovation and ambition, building a society unlike any the world had ever seen. The Old Kingdom, Age of the Pyramids. It was during the Old Kingdom, around 2700 to 2200 BCE, that the Egyptians undertook one of the most extraordinary projects in human history: the construction of the pyramids. The pharaohs of the 4th dynasty, beginning with Sneferu, initiated a revolution in architecture. Sneferu experimented with pyramid designs, moving from the step pyramid to the true smooth-sided pyramid. His successors, including the legendary Khufu, perfected the art. Khufu's Great Pyramid at Giza stands as the most iconic symbol of ancient Egypt. Rising nearly 150 meters, built with more than 2 million limestone blocks, it was originally covered in gleaming white casing stones that reflected the sun. To ancient eyes, it must have appeared as a stairway to the heavens. These pyramids were not simply tombs. They were eternal vessels, designed to ensure the pharaoh's resurrection and immortality. Inside their chambers, elaborate rituals and treasures were placed, guiding the king through the afterlife. But the construction of these monuments also reveals something about Egyptian society. The workforce was not composed of slaves, as often believed, but of skilled laborers, farmers who worked during the flood season, and architects of remarkable genius. They lived in organized communities, receiving food, housing, and even medical care. The Old Kingdom thus represents both the height of royal power and the collective spirit of the Egyptian people. Together, they built monuments that still command awe and reverence more than 4,500 years later. Order, collapse, and renewal. Yet no civilization is without its struggles. By the end of the Old Kingdom, internal conflicts, famine, and weakening central power led to a period of decline. Egypt fragmented into smaller regional states, each ruled by local governors. This era, known as the First Intermediate Period, was marked by chaos and hardship. But out of turmoil often comes renewal. Around 2050 BCE, a new dynasty arose in Thebes, in Upper Egypt. Under the leadership of Mentuhotep II, Egypt was once again unified. Thus began the Middle Kingdom, a period of cultural revival, stronger administration, and artistic flowering. The Middle Kingdom pharaohs focused less on colossal monuments and more on public works, irrigation, fortresses, and literature. They expanded trade routes into Nubia and the Near East, enriching the kingdom with exotic goods and cultural exchange. Egyptian literature, including tales like The Story of Sinew, blossomed in this era, reflecting a more human, introspective society. The cycle of unity, decline, and renewal would become a recurring theme in Egyptian history. And with each rebirth, Egypt emerged stronger, more innovative, and more influential. By the mid-2nd millennium BCE, Egypt was ready to enter its golden age. Out of centuries of struggle and recovery emerged a civilization of unmatched power and splendor. This was the New Kingdom, lasting from around 1550 to 1070 BC, a time when pharaohs ruled as emperors, armies marched beyond Egypt's borders, and temples rose like mountains of stone along the Nile. The rise of the empire. The New Kingdom began with victory. Foreign invaders known as the Hyksos had once seized control of Egypt, introducing the horse and chariot. But the pharaoh Ahmose drove them out, uniting the land once more and laying the foundations for a military powerhouse. From Thebes, Egypt expanded its influence across the Near East and deep into Nubia. Pharaohs like Thutmose III led campaigns as far as Syria, earning him the title of the Napoleon of Egypt. Egypt was no longer just a kingdom, it was an empire. Wealth poured into the Nile Valley, gold from Nubia, cedar from Lebanon, incense from Punt, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan. This wealth was not hoarded in secrecy. It was poured into magnificent temples, colossal statues, and vast tombs that testify to Egypt's divine kingship. Hatshepsut, the female pharaoh. Among the rulers of the New Kingdom, few shine brighter than Hatshepsut. Rising to power around 1479 BCE, she defied convention by ruling as pharaoh, not as queen consort, not as regent, but as king in her own right. Hatshepsut's reign was marked not by war, but by prosperity and diplomacy. She opened trade routes to the mysterious land of Punt, bringing back riches and exotic animals. She commissioned some of the most beautiful temples in Egyptian history, including her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahri, a masterpiece of symmetry and design, still standing proudly today. Though later rulers tried to erase her legacy, carving her name out of monuments, her story endures as proof of the resilience and vision of Egyptian leadership. Akhenaten, the heretic king. But Egyptian history was not always stable. In the mid-14th century BCE, a pharaoh named Akhenaten attempted one of the most radical revolutions in ancient history. He abandoned Egypt's pantheon of gods and proclaimed the worship of a single deity, Aten, the sun disk. Akhenaten moved the capital to a new city, Amarna, and imposed his new religion with zeal. For a brief moment, Egypt flirted with monotheism. But the change was too abrupt, too disruptive. After Akhenaten's death, the old gods returned, his city was abandoned, and his memory branded as that of a heretic. Yet his story lives on, especially through the art of his reign, naturalistic, intimate, portraying the royal family with an honesty unseen before. Tutankhamun, the boy king. Amid this turbulence rose a boy pharaoh, Tutankhamun. Though he ruled only a short time, and died at around 18 years old, his fame would one day eclipse that of even Ramses the Great. Tutankhamun's reign restored the traditional gods, returning to Thebes and the old ways. But his real claim to immortality came not from his life, but from his death. In 1922, British archaeologist Howard Carter discovered his nearly intact tomb in the Valley of the Kings, filled with treasures, golden masks, and sacred relics that captured the world's imagination. Tutankhamun became a symbol of Egypt's eternal mystery, a reminder that even forgotten kings could live forever through discovery. Ramses II, the Great Builder. No name in Egyptian history carries more grandeur than Ramses II, also known as Ramses the Great. Reigning for 66 years in the 13th century BCE, he built more monuments than any other pharaoh. Ramses II is remembered for his military campaigns, including the famous Battle of Kadesh against the Hittites, one of the earliest recorded battles in history. Though the outcome was inconclusive, Ramses declared victory and later signed what is considered the world's first known peace treaty. But it was as a builder that Ramses truly secured his legacy. The colossal temples of Abu Simbel, carved into the cliffs of Nubia, with statues of the pharaoh towering 20 meters high, still stand as an awe-inspiring testament to his ambition. Ramses II lived into his 90s, fathering dozens of children. To his people, he was a god among men, the living embodiment of Egypt's eternal might. The gods of Egypt. At the heart of Egyptian civilization lay its religion. To the Egyptians, the world was a delicate balance of forces, maintained through devotion to the gods. The pantheon was vast. Ra, the sun god, who sailed his solar bark across the sky each day and through the underworld at night. Osiris, lord of the afterlife, who once ruled the earth before being slain by his brother Set. Isis, goddess of magic and motherhood, who resurrected her husband Osiris and protected their son Horus. Horus, the falcon-headed god of kingship, symbolizing divine power on earth. Anubis, guardian of the dead, who weighed the heart of the deceased against the feather of truth. Temples were not just places of worship, but centers of economic and political life. Priests conducted rituals to ensure harmony between gods and men. Festivals filled the streets, binding communities together in shared devotion. Religion permeated every aspect of life, from farming and healing to politics and justice. To live in Egypt was to live under the gaze of the gods. The afterlife, journey beyond death. Yet perhaps the most enduring aspect of Egyptian religion was its vision of the afterlife. For the Egyptians, death was not an end, but a transition to another form of existence. The body had to be preserved through mummification, a meticulous process that took up to 70 days. Organs were removed and placed in canopic jars. The body was dried, wrapped in linen, and placed in a decorated coffin. But preservation was only the first step. The soul faced a perilous journey through the underworld, guided by spells and prayers recorded in the Book of the Dead. Along the way, the deceased confronted demons, gates, and trials. At the climax, the heart was weighed against the feather of Ma'at, the symbol of truth and justice. If the heart was pure, the soul entered the eternal paradise known as the Field of Reeds, a mirror of life along the Nile. If the heart was heavy with sin, it was devoured by a monstrous creature, ending existence forever. This obsession with eternity explains the grandeur of Egyptian tombs, the treasures buried with kings, and the endless quest to defy mortality. To the Egyptians, immortality was not a dream. It was a birthright, if one lived according to Ma'at. Decline of the New Kingdom. Despite its magnificence, the New Kingdom could not last forever. Corruption, internal strife, and foreign invasions weakened Egypt's power. By the 11th century BCE, the empire fractured, beginning the slow decline of the Pharaonic age. Yet even in decline, Egypt's cultural influence endured. Its gods, art, and wisdom spread across the Mediterranean world, shaping civilizations yet to rise. While the pharaohs and gods commanded the grand stage of Egyptian civilization, it was the daily lives of ordinary people that gave Egypt its true vitality. Along the banks of the Nile, in fields, workshops, and bustling markets, the rhythm of existence unfolded much as it had for centuries. To understand Egypt's greatness, we must step into the world of its people. Life along the Nile. The typical Egyptian lived close to the land. Farmers made up the majority of the population, working the fertile floodplains that the Nile replenished each year. Using wooden plows pulled by oxen, they cultivated wheat, barley, and flax. Irrigation channels ensured crops thrived even as the floods receded. Daily meals were simple but nourishing: bread, beer, onions, fish from the Nile. Beer, thick and cloudy, was not merely a drink but a staple of survival. Bread, baked in clay ovens, came in endless shapes and sizes. Homes were modest, mud brick houses with flat roofs, often shared by extended families. Inside, pottery vessels stored grain, and rush mats covered the floors. Life was not luxurious, but it was secure, thanks to the river's bounty. Children played with dolls and toy animals carved from wood. Education was limited to the elite, though scribes, those trained in the sacred art of writing, held high status. To become a scribe meant escaping the toil of the fields, securing a respected place in society. Social hierarchy. Egyptian society was a pyramid in itself. At the top stood the pharaoh, the divine ruler. Beneath him, a class of nobles, priests, and military leaders maintained order. Below them, scribes and skilled artisans crafted the tools, texts, and monuments of the kingdom. Most Egyptians were farmers, living simple lives yet contributing to the wealth and stability of the state. At the bottom were servants and slaves, often prisoners of war, though slavery in Egypt was less widespread than in later empires. Women in Egypt enjoyed rights that astonished other ancient cultures. They could own property, initiate divorce, and run businesses. Queens and noble women, like Nefertari and Hatshepsut, wielded immense power. Marriage was seen as a partnership, and art often depicts husbands and wives side by side in affection. Economy and trade. The Egyptian economy was rooted in agriculture, but trade expanded Egypt's horizons. From Nubia came gold, ivory, and ebony. From Lebanon came cedar wood for ships and temples. From the fabled land of Punt arrived incense, myrrh, and exotic animals. Markets bustled with activity: linen cloth, copper tools, pottery, jewelry. Barter was common, but grain functioned as a kind of currency, stored in massive granaries. The state controlled much of the economy, redistributing resources to temples, officials, and workers. This system ensured not only survival, but a surplus, the surplus that built pyramids, supported armies, and financed monumental temples. Art and architecture. If the economy sustained Egypt, its art and architecture gave it soul. The Egyptians sought permanence, order, and beauty, values that echoed in their creations. The Pyramids of Giza remain the most famous achievement, colossal tombs built with mathematical precision. But Egyptian architecture was more than pyramids. Temples like Karnak and Luxor dazzled with towering columns, carved reliefs, and sanctuaries filled with divine presence. The Temple of Karnak, dedicated to Ammonius, grew over centuries into the largest religious complex ever built. Its hypostyle hall, with 134 massive columns, still overwhelms visitors with its scale. Abu Simbel, carved into rock by Ramses II, was designed so that twice a year, the rising sun illuminated the inner sanctuary, touching the statues of the gods and Ramses himself. Such mastery of engineering reflects both devotion and ambition. Egyptian art was governed by strict conventions. Figures were painted in profile, yet with frontal eyes and shoulders, creating a distinctive style that lasted for millennia. Hieroglyphs adorned walls, blending text with image into a seamless narrative. Colors were symbolic: green for fertility, black for rebirth, gold for divinity. Art was not meant to imitate life, but to represent eternal truths. Music, dance, and leisure. Beyond temples and tombs, Egyptians also enjoyed life. Music filled their festivals: harps, flutes, and drums accompanied hymns to the gods. Dancers and acrobats performed at banquets, bringing joy to nobles and commoners alike. Games were popular, too. The board game Senet, played with carved pieces on decorated boards, symbolized the journey of the soul through the afterlife. Children played with marbles, spinning tops, and carved figurines. Even in a civilization obsessed with eternity, Egyptians embraced the pleasures of the present. Writing and literature. One of Egypt's greatest legacies was its system of writing, hieroglyphs. These sacred carvings, combining pictures and symbols, recorded everything from royal decrees to prayers for the dead. Scribes also developed simpler scripts, hieratic and later demotic, for everyday use. Writing allowed the state to administer taxes, record harvests, and preserve history. Egyptian literature flourished, blending wisdom, poetry, and narrative. Works like the Instructions of Ptahhotep offered guidance on morality and leadership. Tales such as the story of Sinew captured exile, longing, and redemption. These texts reveal a society deeply reflective, concerned not only with survival but with meaning. Science and medicine. The practical needs of Egypt, measuring land, building monuments, treating the sick, drove scientific innovation. In mathematics, Egyptians mastered geometry, using ropes and rods to survey land after floods. Their knowledge of proportion and balance enabled the construction of pyramids and temples with astonishing accuracy. In astronomy, they observed the stars to predict the Nile's flooding. The rising of Sirius, the brightest star, marked the new year. They devised a calendar of 365 days, dividing the year into 3 seasons: inundation, growth, and harvest. In medicine, Egyptian doctors were pioneers. Papyrus scrolls such as the Ebers Papyrus and Edwin Smith Papyrus describe diagnoses, treatments, and even surgical procedures. Remedies combined herbal knowledge with incantations, reflecting both science and spirituality. They recognized the pulse, treated wounds with honey and resins, and even performed early forms of dentistry. Some practices may seem strange today, but others, like the use of moldy bread to treat infections, foreshadowed modern antibiotics. Legacy of knowledge. Egypt's knowledge spread far beyond its borders. Greek scholars such as Herodotus, Plato, and Pythagoras studied in Egypt, carrying ideas back to their own lands. Later, in the Islamic Golden Age, scholars translated Egyptian texts, ensuring their survival. The fusion of Egyptian science, philosophy, and religion would shape Western civilization for centuries to come. The Valley of the Kings. Perhaps the greatest symbol of Egypt's later artistry is the Valley of the Kings, where New Kingdom pharaohs were buried in hidden tombs carved into desert cliffs. Unlike the visible pyramids, these tombs sought secrecy, protection from tomb robbers. Inside, walls were painted with vivid scenes, gods guiding the king through the underworld, stars glittering on ceilings, hymns inscribed in glowing colors. Here, art and religion merged in a single purpose: to ensure the pharaoh's safe passage into eternity. The most famous of these tombs is that of Tutankhamun, discovered in 1922. Its golden treasures, untouched for millennia, offered the world a glimpse of Egypt's vision of immortality. A civilization of balance. In every aspect, from farming to architecture, from art to science, the Egyptians sought balance. Balance between life and death, between order and chaos, between human effort and divine will. This pursuit of balance gave their civilization a resilience few others matched. Even as dynasties fell and invaders came, the essence of Egypt endured, carved in stone, written in hieroglyphs, painted on tomb walls. For the Egyptians, to live was to prepare for eternity. And in doing so, they created achievements that would last for all eternity. Even as the last pharaohs faded into history, the spirit of ancient Egypt refused to die. Its monuments endured, its knowledge traveled, and its myths lived on in the imagination of every generation that followed. Egypt was more than a kingdom, it was an idea, an eternal symbol of human ambition, resilience, and the search for immortality. The late period in foreign rule. By the first millennium BCE, Egypt had entered the late period. Foreign powers, Assyrians, Persians, and eventually Greeks, claimed dominion over the land of the Nile. Yet even under foreign rule, Egyptian culture proved remarkably resilient. When Alexander the Great conquered Egypt in 332 BCE, he was welcomed as a liberator. In his honor, the city of Alexandria was founded, a city that would become one of the great centers of knowledge in the ancient world. After Alexander's death, his general Ptolemy established the Ptolemaic dynasty, blending Greek and Egyptian traditions. The most famous descendant of this line was Cleopatra VII, whose intelligence, political skill, and charisma made her a legend. Cleopatra's alliances with Julius Caesar and later Mark Antony tied Egypt's fate to that of Rome. With her death in 30 BCE, Egypt became a Roman province, and the age of the pharaohs ended. Yet even Rome could not erase the deep roots of Egypt's culture. Temples continued to operate, hieroglyphs still adorned sacred walls, and the mystique of Egypt spread across the empire. Influence on Greece and Rome. Egypt's legacy profoundly shaped the classical world. Greek philosophers traveled to Egypt to study mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. Pythagoras, Plato, and Herodotus all marveled at its wisdom. The Greeks adopted Egyptian religious imagery, blending gods like Isis into their own pantheon. In Rome, the cult of Isis became one of the empire's most widespread faiths, her temples rising as far away as Pompeii and London. Roman emperors built obelisks in their capitals, symbols of power stolen from the Nile. Even the calendar of Julius Caesar, the Julian calendar, was inspired by Egypt's solar year. Thus, long after Egypt's political power waned, its cultural power expanded across the Mediterranean world. Echoes in religion. Egyptian thought also left echoes in the great religions that followed. Concepts of judgment after death, resurrection, and eternal life resonated in Judaism, Christianity, and later Islam. The image of the soul's journey through trials, of reward and punishment beyond the grave, carried forward Egypt's vision of cosmic justice. In this way, the wisdom of the Nile became part of the moral fabric of humanity. The fall into silence. As centuries passed, Egypt's temples fell silent. Christianity spread across the land, and with it came new beliefs that saw the old gods as relics of a pagan past. Temples were abandoned, hieroglyphs forgotten. By the Middle Ages, Egypt's ancient language was a mystery, its monuments misunderstood. To many, the pyramids were thought to be granaries of the biblical Joseph, their true purpose lost to time. Egypt became a land of ruins, its ancient voice silenced, waiting for rediscovery. Rediscovery, from Napoleon to the Rosetta Stone. That rediscovery began in the late 18th century. When Napoleon Bonaparte invaded Egypt in 1798, he brought with him not just soldiers, but scholars. They catalogued temples, copied inscriptions, and ignited a new fascination with Egypt in Europe. The most important breakthrough came in 1799, with the discovery of the Rosetta Stone, a slab inscribed with the same text in Greek, Demotic, and hieroglyphs. For decades, scholars struggled to unlock the code of the ancient script. Finally, in 1822, the French scholar Jean-François Champollion succeeded, opening the door to a forgotten world. For the first time in over 1,000 years, the Egyptians spoke again through their own words. This moment marked the birth of modern Egyptology, a science that continues to reveal new treasures and insights to this day. Egyptomania and modern fascination. The 19th and 20th centuries witnessed an explosion of Egyptomania. Obelisks were erected in Paris, London, and New York. Egyptian motifs influenced art, architecture, and literature. The discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922 by Howard Carter captured the world's imagination like never before. The golden mask of the Boy King became an icon, his treasures touring the globe, sparking waves of fascination with Egypt's splendor. Even today, Egypt's imagery permeates popular culture, films, novels, fashion, music. From Hollywood epics to pop stars in pharaonic costumes, the allure of Egypt endures, a testament to its timeless power. Modern science and ancient secrets. And still, Egypt guards its secrets. Each year, archaeologists uncover new tombs, temples, and mummies buried beneath the sands. Advanced technology, from satellite imaging to DNA analysis, sheds light on mysteries once thought unsolvable. We now know more about how pyramids were built, how mummies were preserved, how pharaohs lived and died. Yet each answer raises new questions, reminding us that Egypt remains a living puzzle. It is this tension, between what we know and what we do not, that fuels the eternal fascination with the civilization of the Nile. Egypt's eternal message. In the end, what makes ancient Egypt extraordinary is not only its monuments or kings, but its vision. The Egyptians believed in Ma'at, order, truth, justice. They believed that life was not fleeting, but eternal. They believed that through harmony with the gods, and through balance with the natural world, humans could achieve immortality. This belief shaped everything they did: the pyramids that touched the sky, the temples that mirrored eternity, the art that sought perfection. And in a way, they were right. Though dynasties fell, though languages changed, though empires rose and crumbled, Egypt itself achieved the immortality it so desired. For 1,000 years later, we still speak their names, walk among their monuments, and marvel at their genius. The sands of time have buried many civilizations. Yet Egypt endures, not as dust, but as a beacon of human possibility. Its kings and queens, its farmers and scribes, its gods and myths, all whisper across the ages, "We were here. We lived. We dreamed of eternity." And perhaps that is Egypt's greatest gift to us, the reminder that while life is fragile, human imagination is eternal. This is the story of ancient Egypt, the civilization of eternity. The sands of Egypt have spoken. But history hides countless more secrets. Stay with us on HistoVia. Because the past is never truly gone, it waits.